There's a secret hidden in plain sight, etched into the floors of cathedrals, woven into ancient manuscripts, and encoded in the very architecture of the Vatican itself. A secret that whispers of divine mathematics, of creation's hidden blueprint, the power of sacred geometry. Most people walk through the Vatican's grand halls and marble corridors without realizing they're moving through a living code, a geometry of the gods. The dome of St. Peter's Basilica, the intricate mosaics, the layout of St. Peter's Square, all of it isn't merely art. It's a cosmic language, one that connects heaven and earth through form, proportion, and vibration. For centuries, this knowledge was safeguarded by priests, mystics, and architects of the divine, men who understood that geometry wasn't just mathematics, but the signature of God. It was said that to truly comprehend the circle, the triangle, and the golden ratio was to glimpse the mind of the Creator. But here's the mystery. Why does the Vatican, the epicenter of Christian faith, contain so many symbols, shapes, and proportions rooted in pagan antiquity and esoteric science? Why do we find echoes of Egyptian temples, Platonic philosophy, and Hermetic geometry within the very heart of the Catholic Church? The truth may be unsettling, because sacred geometry, long before it was a mathematical study, was a spiritual technology, one that ancient civilizations used to align their consciousness with the divine order of the cosmos. The Vatican, whether by intention or inheritance, has preserved this ancient code, perhaps even used it, to channel spiritual power, influence collective faith, and maintain an energetic harmony few truly understand. In this exploration, we'll journey deep into the hidden architecture of belief. We'll uncover how sacred geometry shapes not only the Vatican's structures, but also the human soul. We'll trace its origins from the temples of Egypt and Greece to the cathedrals of Rome, and decode how these patterns affect consciousness itself. Because once you understand the geometry of the divine, you begin to see reality for what it truly is. Not chaos, not coincidence, but a perfect, vibrating order. And those who hold that knowledge hold the key to shaping worlds. To understand the Vatican's connection to sacred geometry, we must first return to an age when geometry was not a branch of mathematics, but a path to enlightenment. In the temples of Egypt, geometry was sacred art. The priests of Heliopolis taught that the universe was not created by chance, but designed through harmonic proportion. Every form, from the spiraling galaxies to the petals of a lotus, emerged from divine ratios, what they called Mot, the principle of cosmic order. To study geometry was to study God's architecture. When Pythagoras traveled to Egypt, he was initiated into these mysteries. He returned to Greece with the conviction that all is number. The Pythagoreans did not see numbers as mere symbols of quantity, but as living principles, archetypes of creation itself. The triangle represented balance and manifestation. The circle symbolized eternity and unity. Geometry was their theology, and mathematics their form of prayer. Centuries later, these same teachings flowed into the Platonic academies and the mystery schools of Alexandria. The early Christians, many of whom were initiated into Neoplatonic philosophy, absorbed these ideas, even if they did not speak of them openly. To them, God was the divine geometer, the one who ordered the heavens through measure, proportion, and form. Fast forward to the Renaissance, the rebirth not only of art and science, but of Hermetic wisdom. As Europe emerged from the medieval age, the Church sought to glorify God through architecture. Yet behind the marble and the frescoes lay something far deeper. The architects of St. Peter's Basilica, men like Donato Bramante and Michelangelo, were not just artisans, they were initiates. They studied Vitruvius, Plato, and the Hermetica. They knew that by constructing a building in accordance with sacred ratios, the golden mean, the vesica piscis, the circle and the square, they were creating a physical mirror of divine perfection. Walk into the Vatican, and you enter a multidimensional text written in stone. The proportions of St. Peter's dome reflect the same mathematical constants found in the Great Pyramid. The key of St. Peter's Square forms a massive mandala, radiating energy like a solar disk. Even the obelisk at its center, an Egyptian relic standing before the seat of Christianity, serves as a symbolic axis mundi, uniting heaven and earth. Why would the Church, which once denounced pagan symbolism, preserve it so meticulously? Because beneath doctrine and dogma, The Vatican has always understood a deeper truth, that all sacred traditions, whether Egyptian, Greek, or Christian, stem from the same divine geometry. The forms may differ, but the blueprint is eternal. The hidden knowledge of sacred geometry, once reserved for mystics and builders, became encoded within the Church's greatest structures. Cathedrals like Chartres, Notre Dame, and St. Peter's were not merely places of worship. They were frequency machines, constructed to uplift consciousness through light, sound, and proportion. Yet as the centuries passed, this deeper meaning faded from public view. The rituals remained, the buildings stood, but few remembered why their shapes mattered. Geometry became numbers. The sacred became technical. The knowledge was veiled, preserved only in symbols, art, and the secret archives of those who still remembered. And in the heart of the Vatican, beneath layers of theology and history, the memory of that ancient code still hums, silent, precise, and eternal. Because sacred geometry was never lost. It was hidden in plain sight. To grasp the power that the Vatican guards within sacred geometry, we must first understand what sacred geometry is, not as a concept, but as a living intelligence. Geometry is the alphabet of creation. Every atom, every spiral of DNA, every orbit of a planet follows precise mathematical harmonies. These patterns are not human inventions, they are discoveries of what has always been. In essence, geometry is the structure of consciousness itself. When ancient architects, mystics, and priests built temples according to geometric laws, they were not simply designing beautiful structures. They were tuning physical space to the frequency of the divine. Think of a temple or a cathedral as an instrument. The walls, the dome, the floor plan, each element resonates with certain mathematical ratios that amplify spiritual energy. The result is not just architecture. It is an energetic gateway between worlds. The Vatican understands this principle intimately. Take, for example, the grand ellipse of St. Peter's Square. Its design is based on the geometry of the Vesica Piscis, the intersection of two circles, symbolizing the union of heaven and earth, spirit and matter. This shape is one of the oldest mystical symbols in existence. In Christian art, it forms the halo of Christ, the shape of the fish, an early Christian emblem, and the foundation of the Church's architectural geometry. Standing at the center of St. Peter's Square, you find an ancient Egyptian obelisk, once a symbol of Ra, the solar god. To most visitors, it is just a monument. But to those who can read the language of geometry, it represents the axis mundi, the world axis, connecting Earth to the heavens. When sunlight passes over the obelisk, its shadow moves across the square like a celestial dial, synchronizing the rhythm of human prayer with the cycle of the sun. Even the layout of the Vatican itself reflects cosmic order. From above, the Basilica's design mirrors the proportions of the human body, following the Vitruvian principles of divine proportion. This is no coincidence, for to the Hermetic philosophers, man was a microcosm of the universe. By entering a space aligned with cosmic ratios, the soul remembers its own perfection. The act of walking through such geometry becomes a ritual of remembrance. But here's the deeper truth. Sacred geometry is not confined to architecture. It exists within sound, light, and consciousness. Gregorian chants sung beneath domes designed according to the golden ratio amplify harmonics in ways that alter the brain's electrical activity. The vibration of sound interacts with the sacred proportions of the building, creating a field that lifts the human mind into states of coherence, reverence, and spiritual awakening. The Vatican's designers were not just builders, they were initiated geometers, aware that spiritual transformation required not only belief, but environment. They knew that sacred geometry creates resonance, a harmony between the inner and outer worlds. When a person prays inside a space built with divine proportions, they unconsciously align with the geometry of the cosmos itself. This is why every curve, pillar, and corridor in the Vatican seems to whisper of something greater, an invisible order shaping the visible world. It's not about the art on the walls, it's about the geometry that holds the art together. It's not about the sermon, it's about the space in which the words echo. The Vatican's power, then, lies not only in faith, but in form. In understanding how form influences consciousness, how shape becomes spirit. And this raises an even more mysterious question. If geometry can elevate human consciousness, can it also be used to influence it? That question takes us into the next layer of the mystery, one that begins where science, spirituality, and secrecy converge. If sacred geometry has the power to uplift and awaken consciousness, then it also possesses the power to shape it, subtly, silently, and profoundly. This is where the mystery surrounding the Vatican deepens. Because while most see sacred geometry as divine artistry, the initiated understand it as spiritual engineering, a means of directing collective awareness. The ancients knew that geometry could move energy, the same way sound moves matter. When vibration meets proportion, reality takes form. This principle is called cymatics, where sound frequencies create patterns in sand, water, or light. The same happens within the human body and the collective mind. Structures built on sacred ratios amplify those invisible harmonies, creating an energetic field that resonates with all who enter. The Vatican, knowingly or not, stands as one of the most powerful energetic constructs on Earth. Consider this: millions of pilgrims gather in St. Peter's Square, all focusing emotion, prayer, and devotion toward one center. The very geometry of the plaza, with its elliptical embrace, acts as a harmonic collector, gathering the frequencies of faith and amplifying them upward through the obelisk, the solar pillar, into the heavens. It is not just a space of worship, it is a resonance chamber of consciousness. In esoteric philosophy, such alignment is not accidental. The Hermetic axiom states, "As above, so below, as within, so without." The Vatican's geometry reflects this universal mirror. Its circular plaza, the feminine, encircles the obelisk, the masculine, a sacred union that represents the alchemical marriage, the fusion of opposites to birth divine energy. To the untrained eye, it's architecture. To the initiate, it's a living sigil, a geometric invocation of spiritual power. This knowledge, though ancient, has long been guarded. The early church fathers were well aware of geometry's potency, yet they concealed its pagan origins to preserve the image of orthodoxy. Over centuries, sacred geometry became the hidden art of builders and mystics, those who could translate spirit into structure. The Vatican inherited this code, embedding it so deeply within its walls that only the discerning could read it. Even the art and symbols that decorate these structures serve a geometric purpose. The mosaics in St. Peter's Dome, for instance, are arranged in spirals and radial symmetry, drawing the gaze upward, a psychological ascent toward the divine. The Fibonacci sequence guides the placement of columns and arches, creating a subconscious sense of perfection. You feel awe not merely because of beauty, but because your mind instinctively recognizes cosmic order. Some theorists argue that the Vatican's geometric design also serves a metaphysical role, maintaining an energetic grid point within the planetary web, a kind of spiritual anchor. Across the world, sacred sites like the Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, and the Parthenon align along ley lines, channels of Earth's subtle energy. The Vatican, positioned with astronomical precision, may be one such node, part of a global network of sacred geometry that harmonizes the planet's spiritual field. If this is true, then sacred geometry is far more than an aesthetic language. It's an interface between consciousness and creation. It can open portals of awareness, stabilize frequencies of faith, or, in the wrong hands, direct energy for control. The Church's long-standing fascination with astronomy, architecture, and alchemy begins to make sense when seen through this lens. To master geometry is to master resonance, and to master resonance is to shape belief itself. Perhaps this is the Vatican's greatest secret, not that it worships geometry, but that it uses it. Every mass, every bell toll, every beam of sunlight crossing a geometric path is part of a ritual, a synchrony between heaven and earth designed to keep the collective heart beating in rhythm with a higher order. Yet, this knowledge was never meant to be the property of a few. Sacred geometry belongs to all of humanity. It is the divine code written into every living being, every cell, every breath. The real question is not what the Vatican knows, but whether you can awaken to the geometry within yourself. Because the same proportions that form the Basilica also form your heartbeat. The same spirals that shape galaxies spiral within your DNA. You are built from the same pattern that holds the stars in place. And when you realize this, truly realize it, you no longer stand before the divine, you stand as it. Sacred geometry is not just something to admire in marble and stone. It is a living technology you can apply in your daily life. It is a way of harmonizing your inner world with the larger geometry of creation. What the Vatican and the ancients understood is that geometry is not confined to temples or cathedrals. It is the structure of being itself. When you bring yourself into alignment with it, you begin to experience clarity, coherence, and spiritual power. The first step is observation. Sacred geometry begins with seeing, truly seeing. Look around your world. The spirals in a sunflower, the hexagons in a honeycomb, the symmetry of your own face. The universe constantly expresses itself through proportion and rhythm. When you observe these patterns consciously, you begin to attune your awareness to the order beneath apparent chaos. It's a meditative act, one that subtly rewires perception. Next, bring this awareness inward. Visualize geometric forms in your mind. The circle, the triangle, the flower of life. These aren't mere shapes, they're gateways. The circle teaches unity, the triangle embodies balance and direction, and the flower of life encodes the interconnectedness of all things. When meditated upon, these shapes recalibrate the mind to universal frequency. Try visualizing a golden sphere expanding from your heart outward as you breathe slowly. Feel the symmetry between your inhale and exhale, the balance between inner stillness and outward expansion. This is geometry in motion, your consciousness forming patterns of harmony. Another way to apply sacred geometry is through spatial awareness. Your environment affects your state of being. Notice how certain places feel serene, while others feel chaotic. The difference often lies in proportion, symmetry, and flow, geometric harmony. You can harness this by arranging your personal space in balanced, intentional ways. Create symmetry on your desk. Align your bed or altar toward natural light. Use circles and spirals in your art or decoration. These small adjustments tune your environment into coherence, allowing your mind and energy to settle into a similar state. Even sound and movement can become geometric rituals. Chanting a mantra or striking a singing bowl produces vibrational patterns that mirror sacred forms. Walking in a circle while focusing on breath echoes the geometry of the mandala, an ancient form of embodied meditation. These acts bring spirit and body into resonance, just as cathedrals use sound and space to invoke the divine. But the most profound application of sacred geometry lies in understanding the self as geometry. Your heartbeats follow fractal rhythms. Your DNA spirals according to the golden ratio. The atoms in your body arrange themselves through crystalline symmetries found in galaxies. When you breathe consciously, you are literally syncing with the same ratios that govern stars, waves, and worlds. You can use this awareness for transformation. When you feel chaotic, visualize the simplicity of a circle, infinite yet contained. When indecisive, contemplate the stability of a triangle. When disconnected, envision yourself within the flower of life, your energy intersecting with all existence. This isn't just imagination, it's entrainment. Your mind begins to align with the universal order these symbols represent. The Vatican's architects designed spaces that silently perform this same function. But you don't need to enter a cathedral to feel divine proportion. You can become your own temple. The geometry is already within you, waiting to be activated through awareness, breath, and intention. Sacred geometry teaches us that the divine doesn't only live in scripture or stone, it lives in structure. In the curve of your breath, in the symmetry of your thought, in the rhythm of your heartbeat. When you begin to live geometrically, in balance, proportion, and harmony, you start to experience the same divine resonance that the ancient builders sought to capture in stone. And that is the ultimate secret of sacred geometry. It's not about building cathedrals that touch heaven. It's about becoming one. The power of sacred geometry is not merely an ancient curiosity or architectural marvel. It is the silent pulse behind existence itself. The Vatican may have inherited, guarded, and woven it into stone and ritual, but its essence belongs to no institution. It is the eternal fingerprint of the divine, scattered across galaxies and encoded within your very being. For centuries, those who understood this power, the priests, the architects, the mystics, sought to preserve it, not just as knowledge, but as a living current. The cathedrals they built, the symbols they carved, the alignments they traced to the stars, all were attempts to mirror heaven upon earth. And perhaps the Vatican's greatest secret is not that it hides sacred geometry, but that it lives by it. Every dome, corridor, and shadow in its design is a silent hymn, a mathematical prayer echoing the perfection of creation. But now this knowledge returns to you, not through hierarchy or dogma, but through awareness. The same patterns that shaped the basilicas of Rome shape the neurons in your mind, the rhythm of your breath, and the orbit of the moon. Geometry is the bridge between matter and spirit, between what you see and what you are. When you begin to see the world geometrically, everything changes. The random becomes purposeful. The chaotic becomes ordered. You realize that spirituality was never about escaping the world, but understanding its design, reading the divine architecture woven into every grain of sand, every sound, every heartbeat. So the next time you look at a church dome, a spiral shell, or the branching of a tree, remember, you are witnessing the same truth the Vatican quietly encodes in its walls. That creation is not random, that form is sacred, and that consciousness itself is designed. The universe speaks in geometry, and now so can you. Because the key to divine order was never hidden in the Vatican's vaults. It was hidden in you. And the moment you awaken to that realization, you no longer seek the sacred. You become it.